This was never the case 5, 10, 15 years ago, but today it is. So the organization has to reinvent itself continuously. And then we have a lot of, you can say, subsidiaries technically, which are nothing but startups. And these are very similar to any other startup that you can think of. So on one hand, there is an organization which is 60, 70, 100 years old, needs to undergo change continuously, especially this kind that I just mentioned. On the other hand, there are startups, or there are products, or there are business lines within your organization which is very old, where to deal with the business situation or the competitive scenario, you have to have a very different kind of approach. And I have seen this in the last 2-3 years that we have experienced, and we are undergoing a huge transformation exercise within our organization. That there are two kinds of people, broadly. One, who have been there for very long, and they say that things have been very different. We have faced these kinds of situations and we have changed at that point in time, so there is nothing new now. Not realizing that the total environment has changed, the kind of people that you have changed, the technologies have changed, everything that you can think of has changed. And then there are people who are new into the company. Either they have joined as cadres, or they have come in as laterals, or they have been brought in to launch certain new products or technologies. They see that there is a huge need to change. So there is always a big issue of culture between these two thought processes or approaches in the organization. So what I have experienced in organization like ours is that there is a need to sell the challenge, sell the problem, sell what the issue is. Instead of saying that this is what the problem is, say that our competitors are doing something like this. The new technologies are creating a different kind of competition in the marketplace, something like this. Do we want to go this way, or we want to go this way? So give those choices to the leadership team. The other is, there is a need to communicate very clearly what is the vision and what's the goal, which means if we change, first of all, what do we want to change? And then if we change, what will it do to the organization? So there has to be a very clear vision, and there has to be a very clear set of goals which you are able to explain to the people. And then next step obviously is what kind of actions are required by whom at what point in time. And these actions are a result of a deep thought process which will lead to achieving the vision, mission, and goals of the organization, very clearly required to be communicated to everybody in the organization. The most critical set of issues in the organization like ours especially is that you need to hold the leaders accountable, because it's not a small setup where you can get all the people together. It is large set of people who are spread across geographies, across the product lines, markets, etc. So it is very critical to hold the leaders accountable. And there is a need to demonstrate that leadership team is together. They are all together in achieving the company's vision, mission, and goals. And there can never be enough communication. I have seen so much of communication, stepped up communication, including town halls and meetings and letters and mails and whatever. But it can never, ever be enough, I think. And people want to understand from the leaders. They don't want to see the leaders telling them something. They want them to demonstrate how it will actually work. They want to feel that confidence that if they change and they take certain actions, the things will fall in place and we will be able to realize our vision, mission, goals in line with the strategy of the organization. So it's very critical to drive the organization in one direction. If anything fails, it is the failure of the leadership team. It is the failure of the communication because if it is not communicated enough and if it's not demonstrated enough, people don't buy into it. They say, no, it doesn't work in my world. So I either don't buy this change or I look for something else somewhere. So these are the kind of things that we have experienced, and these points I have put as highlights, especially from the last 2-3 years of big change, big push in our organization, because we have changed the structure, we have changed the policies, we have changed the processes, we have changed the governance structure in the company to deal with the new world of competition that exists today. So these are a few of the highlights of my experience in the last couple of years that we have been pushing change or the transformation agenda that we have undertaken in our company. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, sir. Up next, I'd now like to request Mr. Jagdish Mitra, Chief Strategy and Head of Growth Factories with Tech Mahindra, to share his experiences and his thoughts.
Good evening. I think as Gajendra talked about, I think it's interesting when I looked around the table that the three organizations that are represented here are pretty, has a number of years behind them. So probably the right topic for the right group, because both Mahindra's, Godrej, as well as Tata's have been in business for a long, long while. And for them, I think, or for all of us, I think, the current challenge is really about staying relevant. And that staying relevant has multiple challenges, which I have tried to depict from an interesting part of the group which we run, which is a technology company which you would expect to be really at the top of its game and its challenges, and really a cool place to work and also cool things to work on, which is what the change of the leadership is all about. But I just thought I'll start the session with two key, anecdotal statements that I think are very relevant for any change. One is that nothing is so painful to the human mind as a great and sudden change. So all of us, any change, whether it's at home or family or at work, don't necessarily like change. We say we want change, but it is a very difficult process to go through. I just want to also draw your attention to the difference, because a lot of people may ask a question saying, why change at all? And what is the big deal about change now versus change having happened before? So to me, I think, I'm a big sports fan, so I always draw analogies from sports. And one of the big things that we've always seen in management presentations is how corporations are equal to teams and how you are like a football team or like a cricket team and so on and so forth. The sports analogies are all about either athletics or football or sport. I think the current change that we are seeing right now is to a sport which most of India is little alien to. It's ice hockey, I think, which is more relevant in this time of change that we are seeing. And the reason why I say that is that I don't know how many of you have watched ice hockey on television, but if you're as much of a crazy sports fan like I am, I watch everything from archery to football. So in ice hockey, if you know, the thing that's played around is called puck. Okay, it's a black kind of a thing which is hit at extremely high speed. So unlike a football or a hockey that we have seen, you can't run after the ball. You can't run after a puck. It just goes past you at extremely high speed. So the whole thing in ice hockey is about anticipating where the puck will come. So if you are a great player, if you are a good ice hockey player, it's about anticipating where the puck will arrive and be there before the puck comes in. So that's what today's world is about, and the current digital world is about anticipating change, because you can't change after the change has happened. So let me just walk you through a few slides in terms of what we are doing in Tech Mahindra. because I can only share that. Unlike a management guru, I can't give you too much gyan. But I can tell you what we are trying to do, and you will be the best judge to see and comment whether we're doing the right things or not. So Tech Mahindra, as you know, is a fairly large company, about more than 110,000 people in more than 90 countries, and we work across multiple technology sectors and offer technology solutions to our customers. So what is the change that we are facing, and why are we facing this change? There are three things that are actually driving the change. We are seeing the kind of nationalism, or neo-nationalism as I call it, protectionism, and the digital disruption. The neo-nationalism and protectionism, there's little that we can do as a company. You know, these are government policies, these are fervors of election, and so on and so forth, which will happen all across, not just by President Trump in US, which gets highlighted, but whether it's in Australia or Singapore or other markets, we will see various flavors of nationalism and protectionism that will come into play, and we'll have to deal with it as a business and a model that we currently offer. But the biggest challenge is really the digital change that brings in to our customers as business leaders, like, you know, people from Godrej and TATA Motors are sitting here. They'll tell you how the change is being brought together to their business. So what really is driving the change forward for us, and what are the challenges for the overall IT or the technology industry that we see? And these are across the board. So what we see in stock markets is really about profitability. You'll hear a term called non-linear growth, which means that our business models are very linear. We do X billion dollars with 100,000 people. Why to 2X, we'll have to do twice the number of the people. And that's typically what you call as a linear business, and the model is changing to a non-linear world. Then you have all of these things in terms of acquisitions, in terms of every such strategy that you're trying to put together, and all of those strategies are under change because of the impact of digital. So we coined a term. I think one of the big things about getting leaders on board is to make sure that you define what you want to be and write a slogan. I mean, and that's what I think is being done very well with the current government, which is actually driving a particular slogan down everyone. And obviously there'll be debate about how much of that slogan is actually impacting or not impacting. But most important is to rally people around a particular slogan as to what do we want to do. We are an IT company, we are an information technology company, and we want to be what we call ourselves a DT company. So the slogan that we have defined across our company is called IT to DT, which means D stands for data, D stands for design, D stands for digital. So all that we are looking at right now converges into these three words of D that the businesses need to look for, and that's what this business needs to transform itself to. So we across the company drive an IT to DT challenge. And that means we have to transform across these 5 cycles, whether it's technology, whether it's our people, whether it's really about our solutions that we take to the customer, and whether it's about our brand. Our brand itself is extremely under pressure as the business models around the world transform, and the leadership needs to recognize that and change to it. So this is a key slide for us, and I think it's important that we all realize that when you are trying to change something around your leaders, let them understand that it is not about 1 or 2 things that you change. You transform across the brand, you across the board. So the easiest thing would be to, for a company like us to start saying, what is our digital portfolio? What do I offer to a customer like TATA Motors or to Godrej, which will make them go digital? But I think there is larger aspects of digital. The larger aspects of digital and the transformation that you do is about culture, is about people's behavior, and it's about the brand, which a lot of the times people will not focus on. And they will focus on the product line without realizing that a large transformation is actually across beyond people and beyond the portfolio, but actually about changing people's minds. And people's minds can only change if you change the culture. And the culture can only change if you bring together practices and behavior that are going to be there to believe in, and there's a long term to it. So we started looking at it, and one of the big things we said to ourselves is that, this large monolith company structure that we have created of 110,000 people across 90 countries, across multiple service lines, and we've started to create that, is not the way to do it. We borrowed from Google the model of saying that, how they moved from taking Alphabet as the company above and made sure that Google focuses on it. And we said we will call this as a brand change around our leadership to understand that we're going to do a freedom within boundaries model. The freedom within boundaries model will be what Tech Mahindra of the future is, where every company that we have acquired will maintain their brands and they will coexist with each other, and the leadership will work in each of them as champions of these areas. But we didn't stop there. We actually broke the whole company and we said, let's alphabetize TechM. So every business unit now is a separate business unit within Tech Mahindra, which owns its own HR, own finance, own resource management group, not just its P&L. And they drive, the only common thing that we put together across them is the brand and the mission and the values of the brand, and that's all they run and come back to us, and the areas that we can share common investments. Apart from that, we've broken the whole organization down into what we call as small agile structures for the future. I just want to sort of give you a little bit of a journey about saying what was the principles that we followed when you do leadership change. And that's the journey we followed to bring a change across the company. And I talked about getting a rallying or a war cry, which was our I2 to DT cry. And then getting people's mindset changed and starting them to take ownership of each of these changes. Because to me, finally, the culture is the most important part of the change. They can have, as they say, and as you can see in this graph, can eat strategy for lunch, though I had strategy for the company. I think that's only a path to it. If you don't change the culture towards it, you're going to not be relevant for the future. And that's really what we tried to do. And I just thought that I'll leave it to every organization that technology is and will continue to remain the backbone of our forward-looking dream. And like someone said, what you're seeing today as the pace of technology change is the slowest in the current time. So tomorrow will be faster, day after tomorrow will be faster than tomorrow, and so forth. And that's the speed of change in which we will have to cope with. Thank you.
Well, some pioneering thoughts over there, sir. Thank you very much. And then marching ahead, I'd now like to request Mr. Farid Talhame, the Chief Innovation Culture Officer of Godrej Boyce, to share his thoughts with the gathering.
Thank you. Yeah, it's there. Okay. Okay. While they're uploading the presentation, I'll just explain a little bit of what we're going to do today together. Talking about culture is hard to do inside of 15 minutes, and now they're showing me I have 10. So bear with me. We're going to go through a little bit of a journey of Godrej's cultural change, but focus on a culture of innovation. So I'm going to go quickly. I'm going to cover a lot of slides, talk about some building blocks of innovation cultures, and if you feel that you missed out on anything, I'm here today and tomorrow and can spend more time with you. I'm going to start by showing a little clip because I think all of us would know Godrej, but we may not know all of the things that Godrej does. So I'm going to show you a brief clip and then we'll start moving.
3, 2, 1.
So that just gives you a little bit of a glimpse. We're over 20,000 people strong. We're 120 years old. And like my esteemed colleagues mentioned, culture is the primary ingredient to change. In my role, it's really about bringing innovation or an innovation culture to the core of everything we do. So working across the 14 different business units with leaders in their disciplines to try to bring more innovation to what they're doing. And when I say innovation, I couldn't possibly stand here and talk to you about innovation of satellite components. We make everything from soap to satellites. But what I can do is talk about thinking differently, and that's what I mean when I talk about innovation culture. Sitting within the Innovation Design Center, which is where we think about new business models from a strategic point of view. We do insights, we think about design and technology as far as what the future technologies or future product designs can be, and then communication, which really focuses on brand. So today, and very quickly, I want to talk about a few key things. Making the business case for cultural change, bringing in tomorrow's technologies in today's businesses, and how leadership can pave the way to bring about change. And then I'm just going to touch on what we know about a culture of innovation or creating one. So, business case for cultural initiatives. I mean, if we look at Godrej or any of the older manufacturing companies, these companies were built on efficiencies and scale, right? And so we've shifted out of an economy of scale into an economy of choice. So it's more going towards user needs, and that's where we do most of our focus within the Innovation Design Center. So cross-generational value, how do we create that? I mean, we're in homes talking to people at various life stages about what it is they need or aspire to have. Purpose pillars of the movie just encapsulated. Most companies think about product categories, so we've started thinking in pillars because people don't live their lives in categories. It's more holistic than that. And so the purpose pillars just serve as lenses in which we think about what we're going to produce and how we're going to produce it and who we're going to produce it for. When we're talking about weaving tomorrow's technologies in today's businesses, you will never be able to invest as fast or as much as you need to do in future technologies. But I believe it's really about what the future needs of people are. So if we were to think about a child starting school today, they would graduate in the 2030s. So she'll hold jobs that don't currently exist, use technologies that have not yet been developed, and then solve challenges that we really don't yet understand. So when I say focus on people versus technology, it's primarily because we don't know what's coming. We are future focused, so we're not negating technology. We're not looking just at today. We are looking beyond. So what we know about the innovation process and culture, capabilities at all levels. So we have a curriculum that we built that ranges from half-day workshops all the way to 6-month intensive programs where people, mid to senior management, come out of their roles in the business and come into the Innovation Design Center and work on huge problems that we see on our horizon. That starts with induction. So new management trainees come in, we put them through a 1 to 2 week program. Middle management, I just mentioned, and all the way up to leadership, where we have a yearly leadership conference and talk about huge shifts or trends in the marketplace. It's all done in co-creation. It's not isolation. It would never work in isolation. If we thought we could just sit within the Innovation Design Center and do this all by ourselves, we would fail miserably. So it is in co-creation. We run multidisciplinary workshops with people from all levels of the organization. And then finally, what is measured is done. So there are, in thinking about metrics, we have to take the tangibles and the intangibles. So Oftentimes we look at ROI. I mean, it's a perfect metric. But there are other metrics beyond that, especially when you're working within innovation. So there's some softer metrics, and figuring out what you want to measure is all dependent on the type of business you're innovating for. This is an example of Project Radar. I know you can't see it very well, and that's fine with us because it maps out where the innovation programs or where the innovation projects are coming out of which program and going into which business unit. So what we do is we try to seed them within the Innovation Design Center. We also have a head of incubation within that space. We then internally incubate them and try to get them into the businesses as soon as possible. Platforms, right? So you always need supporting platforms. Culture is really about people, places, policies, and practices. The knowledge management system that we are starting to fill with insights that we're getting from all over the businesses and all of the projects we're doing so that we can help connect the dots between businesses. Places. So we've designed a space. I love the WeWork conversation because we've designed a space that was designed for people to come eat, meet, work, and explore. I'll just show you a couple of those pictures. So this is very new within the context of Godrej. And if you think about older manufacturing companies, this looks more like a Google office. But it's set up so that people can come together and work differently and collaborate differently. The unique thing about this space is it was designed, built, and run currently all by Godrej employees. So there was no outside help. We did this from beginning to end, soup to nuts. So how can leadership pave the way to bring about change in an organization? It's really about clarity and alignment, especially when you think about 14 different business units. Each one will have their own strategy. So mapping that innovation to that strategy is going to be key. I'm going to fly through 7 building blocks. So strategic fit. Obviously, if the innovation strategy isn't fitting strategically, it's going to fail. So it has to be closely tied to organization's strategic vision. Alignment. So having a common understanding of what innovation means and what type of innovation you want to do, what altitude or the depth of innovation. Is it incremental or is it radical? Open to new thinking. So companies want to grow through innovation. We hear that all the time, but often the ideas are really fuzzy and they require new skill sets, new ways of operating, new business models, and they don't regularly fit into the organizational structure. So that's something to pay close attention to. And then collaborative connections. So great innovation results from connecting the dots, which I mentioned. But these domains are actively resist or repel ideas outside of their group. So it's really about communicating and collaborating. Resource commitment. So innovation requires your best minds, and those are hard to give up sometimes from a business unit because you want them in the business unit. So managing that or balancing that is key. And then budget allocation. So a lot of times leaders insist that innovation is important, but maybe may not make the innovation projects a priority because, of course, businesses are tied to, this year or 18 months out. And so innovation sometimes is far beyond that. And then last one, policy, processes, and permissions. So a whole different set of policies are required to grant your trusted talent the permission to innovate. And so that is what we've learned in our journey about innovation. And thank you for bearing with me. I know we're a couple minutes over.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's now open the floor for questions again. And let's get some questions from the audience as well.
So I have a question for Farid. You started your presentation with, the role which you have in your company, right? My question is, what is the definition of success for you for this role? When would you consider yourself having done a good job 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 years down the line? Sorry. So because innovation will not show instant results. It's a high gestation, long gestation agenda, right? So success measurements cannot have KPIs which are like 1 year, 2 year KPIs. It may take a decade to kind of see innovation through its life cycle. So, what's success for you?
Correct. I don't think there's no silver bullet, right? So there's no single answer also. We were founded in 1897. We have been innovating since day one. So when you ask, when do we think we're successful? I don't think there's a single answer. And success metrics range, right? As I mentioned, depending on the level of innovation, we tend to think in step innovation, which is incremental, jump and leap. And leap is disruptive, and jump is right in the middle. So each of those will have their own metrics. We always want to go from concept to commercialization, but some of those periods take a longer time. So you'd know Chodacool. Chodacool has been around for 5-6 years as a marketable product. I mean, it was in development prior to that. There have been many success metrics associated with Chodacool. I mean, I could take a look at all of the press that is generated for Godrej and HBR articles that were written, and the fact that I sometimes go to conferences like this and see people who are not associated with Godrej at all show Chodacool as an example of innovation. So that is one success metric. Then obviously there are business success metrics. I hope that answers it. There's not a direct answer for you.
All right, let's take another question. All right, we have a lady over here who has a question. We also have Ritu who has a question. Can you have the mic passed on here as well?
Hello. I have a question for Mr. Jagdish. So as you mentioned, like, you have divided the entire organization into made it into smaller chunks so that it is more agile. I work in Godrej Innovation Center, and with our experience, it has been like we have 14 business units, and each one of them do their best in their own divisions. So what we understood is, like, today they are working in silos and there is a need for collaboration, whereas you have gone taken a reverse direction. So what are your thoughts on that? It was just contradicting, so
A very, very good question. I think, so you'll have to decide why we are particularly putting a change in a structure. What is the one driver or one goal to make sure that that goal is achieved, but then the other goals will have to work around that to make it happen. So for us, I think the biggest change in technology was that the speed and agility of change. And we found that each of the businesses that we are creating in different markets, either in America or in Europe or wherever else, will need to follow a very fast decision-making process, and they'll have to take decisions quickly and not rely back on corporate or the larger organizations to decide. So to us, speed of change and the agility was the key driver to make that change happen. So that's the reason for breaking it down. Now with that comes the challenge that you talked about, that each of them become very siloed and each of them become very focused on their units only. So what we've then created a structure which allows us to share on a monthly basis what investments they are making. So that if we are making an investment in a business unit A on something to do with IoT technologies or related to something to do with AR, VR type of technologies, we don't replicate a similar investment or a partnership elsewhere. And then one of the other things that I run is an incubator within Tech Mahindra. So we actually, that's called TechM Growth Factories, and we run that as an incubator for primarily B2B businesses, but some B2C as well. But we use these ideas that come from the market to incubate and fund these ideas in the growth factory. So that's how we make sure that the changes and the incubation is not limited to only one silo, but is shared across. Now answer your question.
Let's take one last question as well.
Hi, my question is for Mr. Chandel. Sir, in old organizations.
Hi, I'm going to request you to be a little loud.
Okay, in old organizations, how do you inspire people to change who are reluctant, a little reluctant to change?
I think I think there are two aspects to this. One is, are you looking at the entire organization, or you are looking at part of the organization? And when I say part of the organization, could be a division in the company or a business unit in the company, or a certain functional area in the company. So it depends, number one, on that. Second is that the people always look up to their leaders. So they will be as inspired as their leaders would exude that kind of confidence and inspiration in their people. The kind they demonstrate to their people, it is as much that those people will follow, understand, look up, and they will do things as their leaders would do. There is nothing beyond that that I have seen.
All right then, so with that we come to the end of another very interesting session there, and I'd like to request Ms. Ritu Maria to please present the token of gratitude to three of our speakers. Please put your hands together to thank all our speakers here for sharing their thoughts as well. And let me inform you all, this was the penultimate session. We still have one last session remaining for all of you, a very interesting one, Game of Consumers, so stay tuned. Thank you very much.